firms. So, Dhruv, right, firstly, correct me if I got your name wrong, and then give us a bit of a download on what RecordOS is.
Great. No, you did well with the name. Hi everyone. So RecordOS is a end-to-end and fully integrated solution for personal tax, starting from being able to collect data from your clients to doing the working papers and all the way through to client approvals and submissions, or syncing with an existing tool of your choice if that's the route you prefer.
Okay. And I guess it's completely cloud native, so you can access it via web browser. Do you have an app, or is it just web browser based?
It's web browser based right now. We're also doing a mobile web version of the product, which we expect to have live by the end of this year.
Cool. And I know obviously of the product because we went through a bit of a exploratory process before it went live. So I was privy to seeing it being developed and what was going to come of it. But maybe talk through the listeners of why you picked this area. So what led you to picking kind of trying to resolve personal tax, and why kind of RecordOS in its current form was born.
Yeah. So we started off about 12 months ago, actually, and we were working with a group of UK accountants trying to, I think the first thing we wanted to do was just find a problem that was worth solving. So identify a real pain point that folks had today. And I think you'd remember that back then, our first thought was to try and see if we can automate corporate taxes in some way, shape, or form. And as we did research with, at that point, about 10 firms, we realized that personal taxes was a bigger pain point and a bigger opportunity to solve. And actually, I think you were one of the first people that clued us onto that. And so that's kind of how we got started. We wanted to identify something that was a real pain point for firms that felt like it was ripe for automation and to maybe reduce some of the friction in the way folks do it today.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So talk a little bit about that group then. Like obviously there's a process that you go through to identify the right solution, and not everyone goes through that. They'll just go, I've got an idea, I'm going to build it. So I guess explain why you picked that route and then how that helped.
Yeah, so what we did with this group of accountants at the start of this year, we were partnering with about 15 firms, and the process we went through was to first take our time to understand how things are done today and to really understand what parts of the existing process were kind of painful or challenging. So for example, one that came up a lot was around data collection from clients, and how do you get people to respond in a timely way and in an accurate way. And then following on from that, and I see you smiling because I'm sure you know this inside out, and everyone here probably relates to this, but following on from that, you get emails, you get PDF, sometimes you get paper, and you have to process all of that information and you have to put it into either Excel or into software that you're using. But the first port of call for us was to really go deep on the process and understand from people doing it day in, day out, what the challenges are. What we did after that was we built a little prototype. So this is not a real product, but it kind of showed the direction we thought we should take with the product, including a vision and some functional elements. And we tested the prototype with the firms that we were working with, just to make sure we'd understood things well and we could actually design a solution around that would work for firms. And this process took us up until about the middle of this year. And based on that feedback, we iterated on the vision and we started developing in earnest around May, June of this year. That's kind of halfway through the year. Yeah.
So was there anything that came out of the back and forth of those accountants with that prototype that made you change path or build it in a certain way that identified specific kind of challenges in the initial build?
That's a good question. I think because we'd spent so much time with the user research prior to the prototype, we had generally shaped the solution in a way that made sense to people. Perhaps the bits we were not expecting and that were kind of a positive surprise was one of the things we are going to get to, which we haven't done yet, is move beyond purely compliance and to use the tool also to provide kind of data-driven tax planning opportunities, right? So as a client's data goes through the system, looking at that and automatically flagging to the firm to think about these are the 3-4 things maybe for this client at kind of an individual level might be relevant or might be worth having a conversation about. So that was maybe one interesting thing that came out of that prototyping phase, was the reaction to this was very positive, because folks today try and do this, but it's quite a challenge to do this when you have lots of tax returns and you have to do it manually, like, wrangling the data to tease out insights, especially when deadlines are approaching and people are snowed under. Just the compliance work takes precedence. And we think there's an opportunity to move this process beyond purely a compliance one into something that can be more beneficial for clients as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when you come to tax plan, there's kind of 2 times you do that. You do that pre, I guess, fiscal end, like what can we do to make adjustments to benefit, I guess, what your tax is going to be by the end of the year, and then post year end, what is it you're currently doing or we need to plan for going forward. So I guess depending on how you interact with your product, it could impact either of those. The number one thing I guess I need to ask at this point, because it seems to be everywhere, have you obviously built your product around AI? Is there like a lot of AI in it? Is it kind of built to work directly with AI, or is it one where you're kind of having to feed it in after you've already built it?
No, so there is AI from the ground up in the product. Where it's most prevalent is in how we process information that clients provide to someone, right? So for example, if a client uploads a P60 when they're sending their data to you, by the time you or someone else, the accountant, comes and looks at that on inside, their, like the accountant side of the product, we've pre-processed it. We've extracted all the information from the P60 and put it in the right like boxes of the self-assessments, on the right boxes of the SA-102. And the way we've done this, based on the feedback we got from folks when we were doing the user research, was to ensure that the firm or the accountant stays in control, right? So it's very easy to see the P60 side by side with what values have been extracted, and very easy to change them in case something is off. And we're continuously adding more and more documents to this. So we have P60 is working, P45 is working, P11D is working. And this week we started with investment portfolios. So how do we, if a client uploads an investment portfolio, how do we figure out this bit is interest, this bit is dividends, this might relate to capital gains, extract that information, map it to the right section, and pre-populate the sections for review. So the goal, so where AI is most prevalent today is in reducing that kind of prep time where people are manually copying data from one place to another.
That makes sense. And I guess that is probably one of the biggest pain points for a lot of accountants is, one, getting the right information, and then 2, typing that information into the tax system. So what your process enables then is that second part, at least, should be automated, or mostly automated, with a review process. And this harks back to something that I was aware was being built over in the US in the TurboTax platform by Intuit, I think last year, and they announced, I think last month, or maybe even this month, that they've now taken it to the next step of not just kind of taking it out and then going for the review, but then when it's a certain level of comfort, getting to a point of going, okay, this is now accurate. And we've not seen anything like that over in the UK, really. There's a few systems that are doing it or trying to do it, mostly on the top end, like the really big firms. But I guess your system and how you build it is I assume it's supposed to be applicable to kind of any size firm. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think different firms will still use us differently depending on their workflows and what they need. And so something we've tried to do in the product is to have very, like mimic workflows that we know people follow today and that work for both smaller and larger firms. But yeah, this kind of technology on using OCR to process documents will be available to everyone. There are some other cool things in the product that are not AI related as well that maybe worth talking about.
Yeah. Expand. So what would those be?
So I think two other things off the top of my head that we know from our testing and feedback that people really like. One is the data collection piece, because we can you can configure kind of templates and configure frequency and reminders and set it once, and this just works on your behalf and keeps, like, reaching out to the client to do the follow-ups and removes any manual emailing. And the way the data is collected, it comes through straight into the return for you, so you don't have to go to an email, download it, attach it somewhere else. And we know this is a big pain point and a priority for folks in general. And then the other one is kind of different, which is because we see the process end to end, from data collection to prep to review to approvals and submissions. It's very easy for us to report in that, right? So we have a live kind of status dashboard and task tracking, pages in the tool. And
Yep.
literally, if you trigger one more client email for data collection, you can see it update in real time, and you can see exactly where returns are in the life cycle. You can filter that by who's working on them and quickly identify any bottlenecks or any areas that need more attention.
Okay.
I think this is harder to do in existing processes, because if your current process is on email and then Excel and then in software, how do you actually figure out what's going on across all of those, versus using something like Record, which is end to end, and so we see everything in one place.
Yeah, and you end up having to manually update something which doesn't really add any benefit to the person doing it, so just end up not doing it.
Right.
But I guess some of the stuff you've run through has opened up a lot of questions for me. So
Yeah.
firstly, you said about a lot of the auto extraction at the moment focuses on the kind of employment income.
Yeah.
And in the budget, literally announced yesterday, some big changes affected dividend income and interest income, as well as other things which I'll come on to. Now, those two, with employment income, generally forms the backbone of any personal tax return, because if you own a business, you'll generally have dividend income. Maybe not so much going forward with a change in the budget, but you'll have employment income and you'll have some sort of interest. So are you, I guess, focusing on those early on? You said about moving into investment portfolios, but how would you extract, or are you aiming to try and extract things that come from an owner managed businesses, something where they don't have an investment portfolio?
Right. Yeah. So super good question. When we work with the partners we're working with for testing and feedback, one of the things we do is ask all of them what are their priorities in terms of what sources of income or potentially anything else in the tax return. What documents would they like to see automated the most? And beyond, I guess, the obvious ones like a P60, P45, P11D, the 3 or 4 that come up the most often are: one is investment portfolios, second is property rental statements, and then dividend vouchers and bank interest. And so these are the 4 we're going to prioritize next. Part of what, so the underlying technology of extracting information from these documents is actually scarily good these days, right? Like I put in a new kind of, sometimes I test on my own docs. I put in something from a ISA platform that I have just to test how well the tool extracts data from it. It works amazingly well first shot. And so we're very confident we can do it for all these kinds of documents. And one of the things we look for when we're partnering with firms is to make sure they can give us some kind of anonymized data or just templates for documents that they've seen. And the more of those we get, the easier and faster it is for us to build a better product.
Yeah, that will make sense. Cool. And then you said about, I guess, you've got clients that are putting in documents, so they will, I guess, pull out or they need to get somewhere. Oh, someone seems to be at my door for some reason. I'll carry on. Let's ignore that. We're live. So they, although my dog's going mental, they tend to. They need to be able to put information in. So is it like a portal? So they've got access to the client's got access to it from their side as well. So there's a secure access way. So you're not risking or trying to send data through. Yeah. Okay.
So it's half of what you said. There's this, we send people a secure link and it's theirs and they can go in there and, provide information and share things with the firm. We actually, based on what we heard from accountants, we made a very conscious decision not to make this another portal. where you have another like login and another password, and you have to remember all of that. But it's still very secure. Yeah. So, and we're with MTD, we're also trying to think about just how to make that experience a bit richer for the taxpayer or for the client as well.
That makes sense. So, because I think rental income becomes incredibly challenging. Another level of income that has now been penalised from the recent budget. Let's put it that way.
Unfortunately,
because unfortunately, because you do get rental statements if they're being if your rental property is being managed externally. But if you're doing it yourself, a lot of that gets collated probably in Excel. So, are you going to, I guess, through your tool, allow them clients to kind of either manually complete this stuff, or are they gonna be able to just throw Excel templates in? What's your kind of view on this?
So let me maybe describe what that looks like from the client side, right? So we send a secure link. You click on it, it opens up a page for you. And the way the client flow is organized is we ask people to just confirm their personal details in case, you know, address changed or something changed. And then we give folks effectively a checklist, but it looks prettier than a checklist to understand, you know, what happened in the last financial year for them. Like, so there's three parts to that. One is what sources of income do you have, and they can just click on buttons to say I had employment income, or I had dividends, or I had bank interest. We ask folks whether they did anything to potentially reduce their taxes, like charity donations or pension contributions. And then we ask a couple of questions around student loans and high income child benefit. So just imagine like some buttons you can just very quickly click and say, this is all that applied to me last year. And then the following step is for them to provide information to the accountants. And they can do this in many different ways. They can upload documents. This can be any kind of document. It can be a screenshot. It can be a PDF, an Excel. But there's also a way for them to leave comments there. And so if, for instance, you know, they just had £200 of bank interest and they don't have any source for it, they can just add that as a comment to say, I have £200 of bank interest from HSBC last year. And they go through this process and they just hit confirm and they send it to you. And then when you log in or when someone else logs in, what they see is that this client has submitted information. And it's very clearly laid out to the person looking at it to say, these were the things this client declared. So employment income, bank interest, dividends, pension contributions. If there are any comments on any of those sections, for example, I have £200 of bank interest. If there are any documents attached, so you can just review all of that. And you can, you know, if anything's missing, obviously people don't always get it right the first time. You can just go back to them and say, we think this is missing, or last year you told us about X and it's not there this year. So we've tried to design it in a way that's very easy for a non-expert in tax to use from the client side. There are tool tips and help text all along the way to just make the process very easy to complete once without getting overwhelmed by it.
Cool. And I think that then leads into a big consideration here, because a lot of tax departments will pick a solution because it can do everything that their clients need. It may not be easy to use, it may not be slick, it may not have automation, but it has like the rare piece of income that one of their clients have. So I know, religious income or something. They've got one client's got religious income. The tax system needs to therefore handle religious income. They only want one system, and therefore they go down that route. But I think there's a careful balance to be drawn here, in that depending on the size of the firm, you may have tax experts, you may have those that do accounts. And what your system, I guess, is in allowing is those that do accounts that have, you know, simple tax returns could kind of do some of that themselves, because the system is automating and prompting a lot of it. And then the really advanced stuff could kind of potentially sit in a different system with the tax experts. Is that how you're approaching this in the go-to-market, or are you trying to build out your system so it does everything?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The let's say the medium term or slightly longer term vision is to build out something that is very comprehensive, but obviously that takes time to develop well and get right. Where we are today is we have all the main pages of the return in the product, right? So your SA 100 to your SA 110. And we will actually be also adding some of the more important supplementary pages. So you mentioned ministers of religion or MP or Lloyd's underwriters, etc. So we do want to cover all the boxes on the self-assessment. Where I think it will take time for us to, meet the depth of products that have been around for a long time is in actually each of these sections. You can have automated calculations and quite a lot
Yeah.
of detail in terms of the actual calculations, right? But going back to your question, then I think if you think about the journey of a self-assessment in terms of collecting the data and automatically processing certain documents, we'll be able to do that for most of the return already.
Yeah.
And what we expect, especially from larger firms with more complex use cases, is that at a certain point when the data collection and the initial review has been done, that they're going to want to move this information across to
I
a
see.
CCH or a Digita, or potentially for a certain subset of their clients, they're going to say, not right now, we'll get to this later.
That makes sense. So your tool, even though I guess it might not be used for the full tax return, can still be used for all that data collection, that communication piece. And then if it is more advanced or has some really specific niche requirements that at the moment Record OS can't handle, then you just kind of lift and shift that data into a single return.
Exactly
So
right.
that makes a lot of sense, and does solve then two pain points, right? You've got one system that can do everything for the simpler ones, and then the same system could do all the data collection, and you're only then using the compliance aspect for the complex calculations.
Yeah.
And that will also save on license fees for those complex tax software. So I like that approach. All right, so let's pivot slightly, because you mentioned earlier about advisory, and we've just had the budget, and there's been a lot of changes. I wouldn't say they're nice changes. I wouldn't say that the business community are in a happy mood today. But what your system, I guess, does allow is it does have a benefit over the traditional desktop-based systems, is that when a change occurs in a budget and it says it's going to happen now, like we've it's going to impact businesses now, that you can bring those changes in immediately. So people can see that impact. If they're trying to plan for the future in future years, they can see what that's going to be. And that, I guess, is why you've built it in the cloud, right? In that everyone's working on the same system.
Exactly. You don't have to do any manual updates on your side. This is not a like on-prem software. It's in the cloud. It's that, but it's also sometimes little things that we've heard from folks. For example, one of the people we were doing research with can only use what the software they use today on one laptop. And if they don't have that laptop with them, they're a bit stuck, right? And they were just saying, like, it's these little things also from a day-to-day perspective that having a cloud native software can just really like help firms of all sizes with, right?
Yeah, and we're going to end up as accountants getting endless questions over the coming weeks from business owners, and having the ability to access the system from anywhere to do some tax planning with it hopefully being adjusted to enable that enables us to more accurately respond to those without having to do complex calculations in Excel. So going back to the tax planning side, what is it that you are, because I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Record OS is mostly focused on compliance at the moment. What is the tax planning elements that you are building in?
Yeah, so our goal for this year is to just get the compliance piece done really, really well. We think we will move on to the planning probably from the next year and next tax year. What we want to do, right, is so imagine there's a client that's doing self-assessments through Record, right? So we can see exactly what goes into their self-assessment. They had some employment income, maybe they had some bank interest, and maybe they're earning, I don't know, 60K a year. I'm going to use a very simple example to illustrate what kinds of things we're thinking about. So at that point, we can see this person earns 60K. They're maybe not making any pension contributions. They have some interest income that's not coming from an ISA, so it's taxable, whereas potentially if it was in an ISA, it would be tax-free. So it's these kinds of things to start looking at what I sometimes like to call like an individual's financial footprint, and then almost marrying that against tax rules and opportunities that are available in the tax code of the UK to identify individual level either advice or just triggers for conversation. So the way we think we'd present this to the accountants would be, here's a list of 5 things you could do with John or Ryan. And at that point, it's in the hands of the accountants to to first think about whether they're actually relevant or not, because it's possible you had a pension planning conversation with them last year and they were just like, I'm not interested in doing anything, in which case you can say, okay, this one's not relevant because we know Ryan doesn't care about this. But there will be things that are relevant, and it's just a trigger for you to engage in a conversation that hopefully leads to the ability to upsell some planning work or to send them across to other colleagues in the firm. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. This will also be an element that relies on AI, as in the part where we identify opportunities automatically using data. And then, as I said previously, we wanted to put you in control, right? So here's a set of opportunities. Now you need to figure out what to do with it. Because I think that's our goal, is to enable and amplify what people are doing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess there's always that balance between being able to provide tax advice, like this is where you are, this is how you can save tax, without moving into kind of financial planning advice, which we can't do, like how you should invest and what you should do with that.
Right.
So yeah, it's always a careful line to tread. But look,
actually, the one other thought in that is I know MTD took some hits yesterday, and it's a bit unclear how quickly people will adopt that. But I do think with MTD, the opportunity to think about advice is going to be greater as well, because you have live data, right? Instead of being 9 months out of date, it's 1 month out of date. And so you can be much more proactive around certain things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there is a lot of negatives about making tax digital and its impact on individuals. And I think it does add a layer of compliance that probably will make people reconsider whether they should be doing their own trade, especially as the tax benefits of doing this kind of thing has kind of been eroded over time. Right. But without getting too political on it, I think the main benefit that your system enables for accountants is access from anywhere. So you can you don't need to, as you say, rely on that one laptop. You can jump into the system, work more dynamically with your clients, more fluidly with your clients. You've got the ability to see live updates if you can. You don't need to worry about updating the system across all your machines. If you've got multiple machines or a central server, you can see any changes in real time. And then you've got the advancement of more powerful tools such as AI extraction and therefore AI planning going forward. So all lots of benefits. Anything you think I've missed in any of that?
No, I think that's it, right? Like I hope where we get to is that we can have review-ready returns in minutes rather than hours, right? So that's kind of the direction of travel we're hoping for on this. But yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, cool. And I guess the personal tax compliance space is an area that's not been brilliantly served historically. So it's great to see some new entrants in here disrupting, making changes and bringing automation. And if anyone wants to learn more about the Record OS system, how's the best way for them to go about that?
Yeah, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sure the spelling of my name is going to be available somewhere attached to this.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm super happy to connect with everyone, talk to everyone, just learn more about what processes people have, what their pain points are, getting their feedback on what we're doing to make sure we're building something that actually meets the use cases and needs of firms out there.
Yeah, and I know Record OS has a LinkedIn page, and I find that following, I guess, the LinkedIn pages of the new and interesting systems, when you see updates, you can see changes, and even if you're not ready to change now, it makes you think about what the possibility is long term. So my recommendation is make sure you follow that page. Thank you so much for joining, taking us through the new system. The launch was how long ago now?
Only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we are carefully managing people into the tool right now. We've seen actually like pretty strong reaction and started onboarding a few people after the launch. So yeah, it's exciting.
That's cool.
Times for us. Yeah.
Can't wait to see what swag you have at future events. And thanks for coming on. And yeah, for anyone that is listening, please do, if you've liked this, do subscribe to Digital Disruptors and make sure you listen to Digital in a Cruel World podcast, where we, I guess, pick up the latest trends and news and insights before we cover it in a more in-depth session like today. Thanks again, and we'll catch you.